Welcome everyone to our 48th webinar of 2021. It's number 122 overall since we started doing these in March of 2020. And we've got a great program today with some great guests. And we're going to talk about a new program that is pretty interesting, a data video coaching program. And when I heard about it for the last year and a half, and been chatting with Matt about it in the group a little bit, and some of the stuff that they're doing is very, very cool, and taking the technology that is available to everyone and building it into something that is that I think not only are they going to make great use of, and already are, but we should have other people know about this. So we wanted to have them come on, chat a little bit about the process that they're using, and show it a little bit. And what it is it's the let me change the slide here real quickly. The person that's going to be chatting with, although it's a 4-person group, we're going to talk to Bjorn. Bjorn's going to talk about the nuts and bolts of the process. But what I enjoy is this is the first time Bjorn's been here, and love having new people come on and chat with us. And I asked him to send me a biography, and one of the coolest things I saw when we looked at it was the introduction to his aim was back on a go-kart in 2005 with a Micron, and a Micron 3 to boot. You know, we're 2 generations past that, so he's been with us for quite some time, and recently retired electrical engineer, but around cars forever. And that's always a cool thing. Started working, driving, and having a good time way back in '74. Does that make you feel old, right, Bjorn? And
Yeah.
at Lime Rock Park, which hasn't changed much since 1974 as far as layouts and all that, right? A few new chicanes. Started using data fairly early in the data process in the late '80s, and some of the stuff I've heard from him, and just chatting with him as a early adopter of, number one, that kind of stuff, in the HPDE world of instructing, and principal developer of that for the BMW Car Club of America. So it'd be interesting to have a new voice here talking about this really cool program. Our co-host will be Matt Romanowski. Been here with us a bunch of times, obviously. Matt has worked together with the Patroon region of the BMW club, and to help them get up to speed on some of the hardware, loaned them some hardware, some pretty cool stuff. Matt has been there to hold their hands through this whole thing technically, and get them up to speed, and that's very, very appreciated. So Matt is here. I forgot to edit that slide. This will be the number 14. I actually I just looked at that, and I realized I forgot to. I was spending so much time putting a yellow 914 in the upper corner there that I forgot to change it. It's and add one more to his webinar co-host role. So appreciate you being here again, Matt, and helping out. It's going to be a great time. So we're going to kind of turn it over a little bit now to Bjorn. He's going to talk a little bit about the 4 fellas that have joined him. They're in the background here to answer some questions of yours if you would like them to. Harry, Al, Bruce, and Bjorn have put this together from the Patroon Chapter. Lots and lots and lots of work, and I kind of thought it was interesting as their chapter is way over here in New York, and I'm way over here in Washington, so we're about as far apart as we could probably get at this point. But then here we are, right? So I'm going to give the mouse control to Bjorn. There you have it, Bjorn. And he's going to give us just a little bit more background on the program, and then start to talk a little bit about what they're doing, and some of the stuff that they've learned from it. And I think it's a great story, and something that many other groups of driver coaches, driving teams can begin to use. So Bjorn, welcome, and thanks for coming and joining us.
Yes, thank you. The 4 of us are basically formed the Patroon Data Team, and we've been together doing this for a little over 2 years now, and very intensively for the past 18 months or so. We, as a team, we appreciate greatly the opportunity to come to the AIM webinar series and present this information. And it's appropriate, very appropriate, that Matt is co-hosting this with me, because he's basically been instrumental in making this happen.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're, and I moved your mouse a little bit. Is your microphone up towards your mouth a little bit? It sounds just a little bit down, but it's not bad. So if pull it a little closer and go at it, you should be able to
Okay.
click and change the screens if you wish.
Okay.
And your microphone is much better now.
All right. Let's see if I can get this to work.
There you go. Okay, give us a little background on Patroon HPDE and how you got to where you're kind of starting here.
Right. So the Patroon chapter started doing high performance driver education events, which we call HPDE or DE for short, annually back in 1978, and have been running one or two events per year, mostly recently at Landmark Park, but also earlier at Watkins Glen and also Calabogie in Canada. We introduced data acquisition to the DE program back in 2007 with a single race technology DL1. But then that kind of got a little bit, it kind of got a little inactive for a while because of some difficulties transferring the hardware around to people. And so in 2018, we purchased two AIM Solo 2 DLs just after they came out for use by students and instructors. And that kind of kickstarted the program again. The Patroon Data Team, as it is now, is basically formalized back in 2020. And we began weekly video conferences, mostly Friday nights from 7 to 8 or 7 to 9 or 7 to 10. And much of this was inspired by Roger starting the weekly and twice weekly early on AIM Sports webinars in March of 2020. The way we use AIM software is that we use the Race Studio 2 analysis, RS2A, as our mainstay. So most of our analysis with students and instructors is done with that. But we've been exploring Race Studio 3 analysis beta since July 2020, when it was first made available, with a focus on data SmartyCam integration or video data integration and enhanced line mapping. And as I mentioned before, we've gotten outstanding software and hardware support from Matt throughout this process.
And as these guys have put stuff together, I want to make sure everyone realizes that they came up with all these really great ideas of how to do stuff. And my role in the whole thing was really just to say, yes, we can do that. And this is how we do it. So I knew the button clicks, but they had all these great ideas how to really pull it all together.
Perfect.
So our data program was initially designed for sole students and instructors. And we wanted to identify and break bad habits because people who basically drive by themselves solo tend to do that. Lots of things come into their driving program and the way they drive, and they very often aren't even aware of what they're doing out there in the car. So we want to develop more effective and up-to-date driving techniques. But there's no real emphasis on lap times. It's basically, yeah, the lap times improve because their driving techniques improve. Challenges we've faced here are basically the hesitation to use data. There's a general perception that data is difficult to use. Okay, that's understandable because there is a learning curve involved. And we're trying to bridge this using several styles of learning type approaches. So lines, heat maps, video, looking at the same data from different angles to help out. Attracting experienced drivers to use data coaching, again, is difficult because they're just very happy going out there and pounding around the track. And they don't really want to turn fun into work. We've had only moderate interest from mid-run groups so far. You see a lot of solos, original solos out there, and but I think that most people who run those lack the analysis skills to properly fully use them, and basically they're being used as lap timers.
Bjorn, let's take a quick little break here. If I'm gonna turn off your mouse so you can play a little bit. The click over on your audio button. It almost feels like it jumped over to your microphone on your computer. It's very, very poor. Double check a couple settings. I'll bump ahead one here on the. Oops, somebody already. There we go. The
Do you hear me now?
That much better.
Yeah, it somehow hopped off from internal
Perfect.
to.
Perfect. I was going to run a couple of the
Gotcha.
slides, but that is much better. Let me do the remote control back to you. Now that
Okay.
you played a little bit, and click once just so you have it. And you should be able to change slides, and that is so much better. Appreciate that. Sorry about
Great.
that.
Let's see if I get that to work.
There you go.
There we go. All right. So program methodology, our approach is to focus on the student. And we do this with pre-day of event and post-event work. So the first thing we do is we have a pre-event interview where we delve into their goals and objectives, and we assess their working knowledge of data, if any. And then we try to identify if there's an AIM communication protocol, which can be used for their car, i.e. do they have OBD2, and do we have a proper protocol for that? And we program our AIM units, our AIM Solo 2 DLs before the event to make sure that we spend the least amount of time getting ready in the morning of the event. And then the last thing we do is determine day of event logistics, and we try to get the people using the data systems kind of close to each other and close to the tower at the track, so that the amount of transport time is reduced. We have very adaptable goal setting, validation, and remediation development plans during the event. We really, things happen, things change. The level of the drivers that we find are entirely, much different than we initially anticipated a lot of times. So we have to be very flexible, and we are. At the end of the event, the students are provided all the run data, all the math channels, and all the user profiles we used in the analysis during the day. And so they can use this. This is kind of a Kickstarter for them to get into using data, and they can use this information for self-study. And then we also offer post-event web video chats to review the data in more depth. So we would go into a little more review on our part, examine the data, and then spend an hour or an hour and a half with them in a chat and go over what we consider to be the most important aspects of the data and how they can improve in the future. Now, in support of this, we maintain a run file and video repository on a Google Drive. And currently we have data from 38 drivers using 7 different data platforms. And we have AIM data from 34 drivers. This data is from more than 12 tracks, mostly on the East Coast, but as far west as Indianapolis. And when we do, since we support multiple platforms, we use Track Attack when we do cross-platform comparisons. And
it's interesting. Yeah, well. Very, very cool program that you guys have built here with tons of technology. I mean, we couldn't do this 10 years ago, right? So the process here, being able to chat with the user, the driver ahead of time and get things set up. Often, sometimes, sometimes that may or may not happen that well, but with everybody's busy schedules, but you're able to get everything kind of set up and then have a process to even dig into the data later if you if the driver or the coach really wants to later and have this data available. I think it's just cool that we have all this stuff. There was a question out in the chat box that I thought was pretty cool. Is what is the idea? What is about the number of members in BMW CCA? If you know, do you have a decent idea?
The actual number is about 67,000.
That's okay. Good, very good sized club, right?
Yeah, and the Patroon Chapter has about 700 members, so we're about 1% of the total.
Of course, and of course, you're here representing your region and talking about what you're doing, but this could be used by other chapters or other teams, small teams, or two buddies, right? It's just such a cool tool that you've built these days. Okay.
All right. Okay, so first I'm going to discuss a little bit about the way we're using Race Studio 2 analysis. We're basically have generated custom user profiles and math channels for this. And this is an example of this is showing the user profiles we have in the system right now. And you'll note there are a couple here from James Colborn, which we copied directly in and only changed some formatting to make all the user profiles consistent, have a consistent look and feel. And the one we're showing here in red is one we developed to utilize the yaw rate capability in the Solo 2s, along with the GPS gyro channel, to provide an instantaneous readout of oversteer and understeer. And this heat map here shows the oversteer situations as red and the understeer situations as in blue.
It just shows the power that one of our when we were chatting as we're kind of preparing for this, you mentioned a lot of people think of the Solo as just a lap timer, and that a lot of that is just the way that AIM has sold it as well, because we listed under lap timers. But there are some powerful channels, especially the new Solo 2s that give some capabilities that you normally wouldn't have. Kind of cool.
Yeah. Okay. We also have worked on a track segment map, a custom one for Lime Rock, which identifies the braking markers. Basically, there's one long braking zone at Lime Rock after the end of the start-finish line. And there are 6 brake markers. They're about 100 feet apart. Not quite. They vary a little bit, but they're about 100 feet apart. And this is what it looks like. So this is one that Harry put together last year. Okay. Now, standard speed trace here versus distance shows here the 6 the segments that are created here for the braking markers. And what you can do with this is you can look at how the person transitions from full throttle and generally slowly up to max brake pressure, and analyze exactly where these parts of the process of transitioning from full throttle to braking, where they occur. And so the student can look at the heat map that was on the last slide and see exactly where this transition occurs, and see how long it is in some cases. So this is a very useful tool.
Absolutely.
And something that I thought was really cool when the guys introduced this to me was that we always think of segments as parts of the track, linked corners and that sort of thing. And this was a chance, and the first time I saw it, that they put the brake markers in. So now it was a track feature, not just a timing feature that we wanted. It was an actual hard point to the track. And it made me rethink how I do some segments sometimes.
The first time we have, in today's discussion, the first time we have seen a difference in the way that we normally think about looking at data with squiggly lines and segments to a new way of doing it, because you're doing some specific driver coaching. Just kind of an interesting way. You're going to see some more as we go on, where they've kind of tweaked the way they do things that I think is very, very interesting.
Okay, so moving on to Race Studio 3, which is what we've been experimenting with for about 18 months now. The first thing here, we're using custom track split maps, and this is something that's much easier to do in RS3 than it is in RS2 analysis, because the availability of the Google Map background in RS3 analysis. So what we're using these track maps to show and study students' control inputs relative to easily identifiable track features. Basically braking markers, apex and track out curving, etc. And this allows us to very effectively identify locations of the V min in a corner, and in a braking zone, time to max, longitudinal acceleration, etc. And part of this is work that Harry is doing using statistics to characterize how novice, intermediate, and advanced students drive. And at the bottom here, I'm showing just I think a huge improvement in analyzing the driven line between RS3A and RS2A and RS3A. And you'll see that it's the same data, and the colors are matched. But you can see where the line is relative to the track features here, which you could not do back in RS2A. So this, I think, is a huge improvement. And so when you look at the same data as we showed in RS2A here before, this is a track map, which in the beginning here, you see exactly the same thing, the 6 track brake markers. And then after that, what we've done here is we've taken the red zones are all the braking, the apex curves around the track. So when you're moving along here, you can see where within that curbing you are. You can look at the dot on the track map, and look at the trace on the measurements graph, and they correspond. And so this allows you to get a better feel and gives the student a much better feel for where they are on the track, because they very often get lost where they are in its squiggly lines measurement graph.
And it's such those of you that have been using Race Studio 3 and playing with the beta a little bit, it is such a cool thing to be able to have your track map open, just like we've expanded it here, made it a little bit bigger for this slide, but you can just reach up to that that colored bar across the top and just grab the edges and adjust them, and you can zoom in on the Google Earth imagery and set them. And this is just another cool way of doing some things for these new drivers that you're working with that are overwhelmed by some different things. And boy, just knowing that this was the beginning of that curve and this is the end, and I remember doing that, and then being able to see exactly where they are on the track with these red corners being that the apex curbing is just a beautiful thing. I think it's just a wonderful way you're doing this. And again, the difference between how we've always used data in the past versus what you're doing now is kind of cool.
All right. Now moving on to the basically going back to the title, which is video data integration in RS3A. And so this is for lead follow student coach instruction. Now I want to backtrack a little bit on the issue of safety in-car instruction has been something that's been discussed for probably more than just the BMW Car Club over many years. And it's become more of a concern as the cars get faster and faster, and you're not really sure that the nannies are going to save you every time. So the lead following approach came under active discussion pre-COVID in the Patroon chapter, and this was kind of initiated by Harry in one of our weekly meetings, showing a video of video of him driving around Lime Rock Park, recorded from a following car. And this is a screen grab from one place, one shot in the video. He did about 5-6 laps, I think. And it was amazing how well you could see how he was driving and where he was relative to the track. And as he was changing his line, you could see exactly what he was doing. Now, this is interesting in that this is something you probably would not have noticed if you were instructing him in car. You can see the traces here. He basically put rubber down coming out of the left-hander in the S's. And this gives us an opportunity when you see this in this integrated video data situation. You can go, oh, well, let's take a look at this. Let's see what kind of data is available in his system to examine this.
I think it's just very cool that here's a picture that Harry's seen, and then a program was born, right? And being able to look at this, and number one, it's a gorgeous shot. There's Lime Rock, as I know Lime Rock a few times I get to go there. Yeah, beautiful green and blue sky, but yeah, trying to keep ahead of that probably faster car there is probably some of that determination of him getting on the throttle a little bit hard coming on the exit, right?
Well, so, no, they were actually working together.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Harry's
he would have
working
been
hard
passed in a hurry. Yeah. They actually managed traffic very well. They were able to get through traffic together, which is that's one of the issues with coaching from behind.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, so I'm not going to maintain that there's no reason to ever be in a car, or that it's always superior or to be behind the car you're coaching. But the instructor in the following car can often see brake application, release points, turn-ins, position and angle at the apex, track usage, yaw variation, especially during throttle steering, because cars wiggle around quite a bit when they're throttle steering, better than in car. Now here's a screenshot from a video in turn 6 at Watkins Glen, and everything looks pretty good here. It looks like the car's on the apex, and I think that if you were in car in the right seat, you probably would think the car was on the apex.
I would.
However,
yeah,
when you look at this from behind, this is exactly the same moment. Okay. You'll see that the car that we were in before is basically 3 to 4 feet off where you really want to be in this corner. Okay, and this is something that's really clear from behind and not so clear from within the car.
Yeah, without a doubt. Again, all these little images that you're showing and ideas are popping up in you guys' in your minds, and you're putting together this program that you're building. Kyle just mentioned something in the chat, Kyle, but just hold on, just a few slides, as Matt said. I think you're heading exactly where these guys went to.
And I think what's really neat about this slide that we had discussed before is, Bjorn, this was you driving.
Right.
And when we talked about it, you said if somebody asked you, you were right to the curb.
Yeah.
I wasn't even close.
And you weren't, but you weren't close. Exactly.
But it just shows a little bit how the video can really match what you think and where you think you are to what's actually happening. It changes that perception to an actual process of what's going on.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. So one of the major issues in the past with syncing video to from the follow car to the data from the lead car has been, how do you do that? And until RS3 analysis came out, there really wasn't this very straightforward and fast way to do this, and something that we could really do within the time constraints of a DE event. This capability in RS3 was introduced by Miliano in his July 9th, 2020. I guess that was his first presentation on RS3A. And the moment where he starts talking about this technique is at the 1 hour, 3 minute, and about 30-40 second point in that video, if you want to go back and take a look at it. And this created an aha moment for our data team, because world timing allows synchronizing the data and video from lead and follow cars. And at this point, we contacted Matt and to see if he could supply smarty cams, maybe holders that are, holders or mounts that would hold a smarty cam and a Solo 2 DL. And he was really happy to help out here and found the time to come down to Limar Park for our August 2020 DE. And so he brought this equipment in, and of course, he brought his expertise, which is really important, because we had a problem with something in a bug in RS3A, which he communicated with Roger right there and then. And by Wednesday of the following week, it was working. The bug had been fixed, and we were able to view the video properly.
That is one of those things that AIM is so good about. It's a big enough company to make cool products and cool software, but small enough where we can actually still get things like that done. Very, very, very cool.
Okay. All right. So how do we go about doing this? What do we need for equipment to make this work? So there's a minimum type configuration, which is a SmartyCam HD with a GPS module. And in the follow car and the lead car has a Solo 2. So minimal, but no OBD2 data. There's an upgraded version, which is the one we've been using, which is having a SmartyCam HD and a Solo 2 DL and a Solo 2 DL in the lead car. And there's a dual video approach to this, which should also work, which would allow you to view two videos side by side from the two cars and the data from the lead car.
And a technical note here is when you look at these, is the real key is that the follow car has to have the SmartyCam HD and a data system. So if it's a car like in my example, in that beautiful yellow 914, we were using my full MXP setup, but it could be a Solo 2, it could be an MXL2, it could be any current AIM data logger to get that. And then the minimum on that front car is a Solo 2.
Okay.
Yep, lots of existing equipment will do exactly what we're talking about here is the bottom line.
Okay, so this is how it looked at that first event. So the follow car is one of our instructors, and this is Matt's mount with the SmartyCam and the Solo 2 DL. And you can see the instructor also has his own Solo 2 DL right here. And this is the view from the SmartyCam camera. And you'll note that the field of view in the two screen grabs is different. And this is one of the important aspects of this. Generally, narrow field of view is better in the follow car because the car looks bigger. And SmartyCam field of view options now are 120, 84, and 67 degrees. So this is something that needs to be evaluated if you're trying to implement this idea.
And this slide really shows the difference in them, because the bottom left picture is about a 67. The top right is a rare Smarty Cam, and that it's the 120. So it's as, you're kind of getting as narrow and as wide of a view. And it's a good example of how different it looks and how it can change the perspective of where the car is.
And and it also gives you to take that the other direction a little bit. Both work, right? And what's cool, one will work better. So if you have existing equipment, throw it in there and do this if you're into the coaching thing and you want to try this out. But if you are considering purchasing something and getting things set up, let's chat about it, or certainly consider the smaller field of view as going to be better for this particular task.
Okay. All right, so how do we go about getting this to work in RS3A? World timing is the key new capability that we're using here. And I'm gonna let Roger describe the two icons there that control how you're viewing the data trace.
Yeah, as we've worked with data for years, from Race Studio 2, now Race Studio 3 on the beta side, we've got these buttons here that we've always worked in a lap-based, typically a lap-based world where the start-finish line starts it, ends it, and then we are viewing it either based on time since you crossed the start-finish line or distance. And then 95, 98% of the time we're doing distance because it keeps the car at the same spot on the track. So you can figure out my speed at that apex or something like that, right? Well, there's been a new addition to Race Studio 3, which we used to be able to do a little bit with hitting the snap button in Race Studio 2, where we could kind of shift things a little bit, but it was all manual. Now we've got this third button over here, and it's kind of listed here as this 235 black button right here called World Timing. And now that you've got that, and I know Matt has already linked the document, I believe, in the chat. Everything that's in the chat will be in the description below for YouTube, for those of you that are watching this later. This PowerPoint presentation, by the way, is available. Matt's already linked it, and it's also available down there. Lots of bullets and key points in here that you might want to take a look at later. But the world timing allows us, with GPS in both systems, both data sets, to know exactly what time of day it is. And then, and we're going to see some examples of it here in a second, then we know exactly what time of day it was, and then we place the cars where they were at that time instead of basing it from the start finish line lap based. So we take away the lap basis of this and we put it on just on the clock, on the GPS, the super accurate GPS based clock. And now all of a sudden you're going to see the two dots at 15 seconds after the hour. You're going to see, you know, these what happened right there. Well, the two cars were 30 feet apart and they were heading down this straightaway in this corner, and then it links the video together with them, and you got this perfectly aligned world. So that's what world timing is. We've chatted about it a little bit here, but it's not heavily used yet. There's other reasons to use that in the data world, but this is a perfect place for it to go. And like Bjorn said, it was just this big aha moment when the Patroon team seen Emiliano talk about this. It was like, oh, we can use that. Very cool.
And it's one that, after these guys started using it and I used it with them, it's something I've started to incorporate when I'm working with the team. Just like we're going to see coming up, is it doesn't have to be a set program where it's lead follow. It can be any two people with AIM data who end up in line with each other on track, is all of a sudden you can jump out and do all the things we're going to talk about here.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So once you click that button, you end up with a screen that looks like this. And generally it tends to pick up more than one lap. And of course your options all change. And once you zoom your way into an area of interest, and in this case, I've picked up a little more than one lap. I like to see the beginning and end, plus just leading up to the begin and just past it. So this also allows you to see in the video just before and after also, when you're dragging the cursor through that or running it in play mode. And you'll see that there's an offset between the two, and that's because we're looking at the data at a given time. And so one car is behind the other.
Yeah, just a function of world timing, right? But easily seen, and the linkage is so cool.
Yeah. Now, one thing one has to be careful about here is selecting the lead car as the reference slice for this to work. And then once you've done that, you basically just click on the data movies icon here, and we get to here. And so this shows the data, it shows the lead cars data. And in this case, I've used a trick that's been shown several times here in the webinars, and I've taken Matt's data and made it light gray so it doesn't really get in the way of you looking at the lead cars data.
And what's interesting here with this data, you can do on top of that, you could even do more, right? If you had the second car, you could have the second video. So you'd have the video from both of them. You could expand the map up a little bit bigger. You could add throttle position if both cars had it. All sorts of things here. This is a base, but there's a lot of information that would be available here.
Yeah, now since you guys all recognize Matt's car here, and Matt basically ran 2 sessions of coaching this student here that day in last August. So I'd like to have Matt go, relate to us what his experiences were.
Yeah, it was a really interesting data to be able to do this and to go from idea to practice and implement everything and see how it went. And as the follow car driver, the first thing that I really noticed, and I didn't think of this till after the event, during the event I noticed, is you kind of hone in on watching this car in front of you rather than really focusing on your driving. You're focused on following. So as a follow car driver, it became exercise in good vision, where to look and how to get around the track and avoid that sight fixation. The next part that was really neat was to be able to come back to the classroom with video and data and correlate that to what I saw. And it gave me the opportunity to go back with the student and say, this is what your data shows, and this is what I saw, and this is the video from your car, and this is the video from behind. And they were able to put all those together. And we were able really to use all the power of Race Studio 3 and not just use just a measures graph, but we can put an XY scatter plot on it. We can put the numbers to it. We can use a heat map and hit all the different learning styles of the student. So it wasn't just a video, it wasn't just the squiggly lines, but we put all these different things together. And then I think it had extra power to the student because it matched their outside perception, like they were driving a video game car, not just inside the car. So they had this, not really a bird's eye view, but a 914 eye view of where the car was and how things were going. So it added a whole new dimension to that instructor and coaching part of it versus just having data or just riding right seat.
Yeah, there's one thing about it, taking a look at video. We had Ed Zabinski on a couple of weeks ago as a driver coach, a professional at what he does. And one of the things he mentioned, which you can see here in the video, but there is there's a whole point of it's hard to see in still, it's certainly hard to see in still, a video clip from inside the car, but it's hard to see in the data, but from behind you can see how the driver is rotating or pointing the car, right? It's not just a matter of did he hit the apex, but did he hit it coming from the right direction with the right amount of roll or turn or point into the car, right? Yaw. And so this is just adds this this whole nother piece of that. The second thing I'd like to add to this is something that we've talked a little, I think only mentioned once or twice in any of our seminars, but the you have this little pair of scissors up here. And I think it's just such a great tool that is not used very often, but it would be great in this coaching world where you find this corner that the driver is struggling with, right? And you watch him a few laps through it, and you find when he does it right, you find when maybe does it not quite right. You can zoom to a certain corner in here. The video, of course, will be at that area, and you can hit this little snip button, and it will take the video of the area that you're showing in the measures graph and make it adds 5 seconds to each side of it, just so you have a lead in and a lead out, and it will snip off that short little piece of video and make a very, very small file where you could just give it to the guy on a USB drive at the track. Very, very cool little tool that is not used very much and was introduced, gosh, 6-8 months ago, and makes this task a lot easier of working with different drivers. You have anything to add more about the data analysis side of it, Matt, before we move on?
I'll just add, Kyle just asked a question in the chat, is if we can put the follow car data with the lead car video. And that's what we have here, Kyle. So this is the follow car video that I was driving. And then my data is the grayed out. And that's a trick that Ray Phillips showed us in a previous session. And then the black line is actually the data from the car we're looking at. And that's the power of using this approach, is that you can see the dynamics of the car driving and the inputs that made it do it.
Yep. So this is the lead follow data and just the follow video, because the car in front didn't have a camera.
Right.
Yeah. And you can see here that Matt was closer to the car ahead at the beginning of this lap than he was at the end of the lap here, because there's more separation between those two.
And that's got a lot of horsepower, but if he's the gray one, this other car apparently might even have more in this particular case.
Yeah, it's an S2000. So it's got a lot of RPM at least.
The driver inputs, Kyle, absolutely. If that was something you wanted to work with, Kyle's question in the chat is add some other things to this. We're just showing a speed trace to keep it simple and make the point. But if you both had data and you both had throttle positions or RPM or whatever it is you want to add, you would easily just add it to the strip chart.
Okay,
good point.
So we've learned some lessons over the past couple of years. One is that the follow car should have at least a 2 second per lap minute advantage on the lead car, basically to free up mental bandwidth when you're driving from behind, and also make up for time loss when you're anticipating braking points and delaying throttle on. Now in this case, Matt had about a 5 second per lap advantage, so that worked out really well, and he was able to really comfortably drive behind the student. The follow car should follow closely. But of course, you need to have enough separation between the cars that you can see tarmac between the cars in the video. You don't want to be bump drafting the person you're coaching. And as we've noted a couple of times here, you should go towards the narrow field of view lens versus the wide field of view lens to minimize distortion and maximize the relative size of the lead car.
I think it's pretty cool that you guys, you've been working with Race Studio 3 and this program for, 16, 15 months or something like that. And these are just some things that you're able to share with people that are thinking about doing this, that will start them where you're at now on their learning curve of this program. And I appreciate you guys sharing some of these things that you found that have been very important.
Well, it's our pleasure. So in summary here, we've basically confirmed over a couple of DE events that lead follow instructional methodology can be significantly enhanced using the world timing mode in RS3A. We've confirmed that RS3A custom track map splits are simply generated using the Google map as a reference. So this is much easier to do in RS3A than in RS2, where you have to input distances. It also visually links the measures graph traces to easily identifiable track features. So when you're looking at the data trace and the map at the same time, it's very useful. Now looking towards the future, with the viability and hardware requirements of this RS3A video data integration confirmed, we plan to expand the approach at this year's HPDE events. Currently, both of them are at Landmark Park. And we want to work with other BMW CCA chapters at their events because there are some chapters that have a number of AIM Solo 2 units to expand and refine the methodology. And finally, we want to begin porting Patroon's RS2A math channels and user profiles to RS3A. So that's what I have. And thank you very much for
absolutely. And that process is coming along, some sort of an automated deal to help us with that here soon. But the one other thing that I'd like to mention is we've just gone through a process of kind of showing what the AIM part of the world of this process is. And one of the cool things that you're doing, and you'd mentioned it on an earlier slide, but one of the cool things you're doing is you're taking statistical analysis that is taking what you get here and then taking it even to another level of being able to help these student drivers understand their stuff better. And I think it was Harry that was working on taking some of that even a little bit deeper, taking all this data and giving them some nice understanding of their averages and and where they fall in the statistical analysis of it. That will be very cool as well. So
yeah, this is Harry's baby, and he's actually used the same technique at the runoffs. to look at different drivers in the car that we're working with. A different drive in different cars in the same class that where we're working with a car.
Exactly. Go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say, since we brought up Harry, who's in the background here and really helped with so many things and has a ton of emails from me. He was one of the success stories of this, and the summary doesn't include here just the summary of things. Is Harry was one of the successes, and it's something that we had talked about on the reviews for this. Was Harry wanted to try some new lines at Lime Rock, and using this process, he realized that what he thought he was doing to change that line wasn't actually happening. And going through everything, it actually took him 9 laps before he succeeded in changing that line. And that's where this becomes so powerful, because a lot of times as we're driving and as we're coaching someone, they think they're doing something, and we can use the data, but that's a hard sell sometimes. And if somebody's a really visual learner, using the video and the data outside the car brings a whole new perspective to it. And Harry said when he saw where he was driving and how it went, it changed everything.
It's the power of data and video, right? See, it's not, you have things to work on, but if you don't even know what to work on, you don't know what to work on, right? That's the power of what these guys have done here. I think it's just I think it's a wonderful thing. So there is a couple of questions that a couple more things I'd like to maybe cover just a little bit. Earlier on, Kyle, I was reading really quickly through the chat, Kyle, but you added one other component to it. And one of the things was, and I just jumped back here, but possibly adding some of those data elements onto the lead follow, one of those two, typically the following elements of the throttle and brake, so you could see it visually as well. We have all the different types of learners, right? And so it's there's the world is open up your mind and understand some maybe different ways of presenting the same thing. It'll be very, very interesting. Let me back to this one. The other one was just, I find this to be a very cool thing that people started to watch. All 4 of these guys that we're talking with, Bjorn and Harry and Al and Bruce, begin watching these webinars and just picking little pieces of thing that meant something to them in their world of how they're using AIM data and video. And they begin to put them together and came up with a process that worked for them. I think it's just the success factor of groups watching and learning from each other. There is nothing new really out there, right? So it's we're all putting stuff together, and I think it's just pretty darn cool that they were able to put this together. So anything else on the data side, Matt, that you'd like to add before we move on and start closing this one out?
Yeah, somebody asked the question about the GPS-09, if it'd be a better tool. The GPS-09 is, I think, the best GPS going in motorsports. The 25 hertz rates of it, the quality of the data, how well it integrates with everything is just phenomenal. So the data you get is better. In practice, using an older Solo 2 with a GPS-08 or any AIM product with a GPS will get you good data, and it'll still link and give you the information you need. But it's not a requirement to have that GPS-09.
Certainly not a requirement, but there have been, and Matt's not just talking from an AIM dealer standpoint. That GPS-09 has been tested by a lot of people, and certainly I have seen it in the data points. The amount of data that you're getting is increased with 25 hertz versus 10 samples per second, and also then because of that they can do the math a little bit better, and the accuracy numbers are amazingly good. So it's one of those things. I often do like technology, and I like to have the latest and greatest stuff just in my nature, but boy, I am one that would be replacing that an older GPS with a GPS-09 if I had that option as a racer. The difference is substantial, so it's good. Okay, perfect. So let's kind of start closing this. But I don't see any other questions in the question box. So I appreciate everybody's questions. This one, just like all the rest of them, will be being placed up onto our AIM Learn Fast YouTube site just as soon as I can get at it today. It takes a little while to compile it and put it all together, but we'll have it up there very quickly. It's going to join all of the rest of them there. We have 187 videos that are up there, all introductory stuff all the way through very, very in-depth topics of where we chat about different things like this. So visit the YouTube site. It's out there for you. Just a ton of information there that's very, very helpful. I think this is maybe the first time that we've had zero number of AIM technical support staff joining us here today. They are also so busy. There was 2 or 3 huge events last weekend, and then they rolled right into setting up today the booth at starting to set up the booth today at the PRI show in Indianapolis. So poor guys have just been on the dead run, and they have always been so helpful with us here that very much appreciated. But if you have any issues that you'd like to chat with us about, if you call the 800 number, they'll push it ahead to me or to the cell phones out there, or answer them as best they can in the office. But that's what we're out here for. So give us a holler if you have any questions on any of your AIM hardware or software. That's what we're here for. The next week is going to be our last webinar of the 2021 season of webinar season, and we're going to talk about formula drift. There's a bunch of very, very good drivers in formula drift, and they use a lot of data. And we're going to have Kevin Wells. He's the formula drift competition director, is going to join us. We're going to talk about the data in formula drift in 2 different ways. Number one, they use it a little bit. Obviously, the competitors are using it and using it to make their cars faster and understand it. And then the organization uses solo 2s, and they're putting them into all of the cars, and they're using it as a technical compliance, technical scoring devices. And I just think it'll be fun to chat with him about something that's a little bit outside of the norm, and I think it'll be fun. And Kevin just is a great guy that's been learning just a ton about AIM data and software and different ways that he can use it for him and all of his competitors in formula drift. It'll be a good time. Okay, and yeah, a little bit of tire smoke there in this particular case, right? Some contact information for the folks. By the way, John, I did see it. It is listed. John's asking if I had seen an email that he recently sent. I have, and it is still bolded and highlighted in a folder. Things got a little crazy this last couple of weeks, this last week especially. The contact info with all of our AIM staff being elsewhere, a lot of those calls and emails were being pushed to the one guy that was still just sitting at my desk and not working hard like the rest of them. So contact information for the upcoming for this slide. Bjorn has been nice enough to give us his email address there and some contact information, and Matt as well. Obviously, you always have me to get back with. This is a cool thing that these guys have built, and really, if you have some questions about it, take a look at this and some of the links that we've included into the chat box here live, or down into the description box if you're watching this on YouTube later. But if you have some more questions about it, Bjorn is happy to answer some of these and some of the different things they've done. That's very, very helpful of him to do that. And of course, Matt is always available to answer the AIM questions. So we're looking forward to that. Okay, perfect. With that, Bjorn, what do you have to add to closing? Was this too painful, or was it? Did you have a good time, I hope?
No, I think this was a lot of fun, and we really, as a group, the data team, really appreciate the opportunity to present this work to the AIM user group.
Yeah, it's going to get there far and wide, and I think it's a different way of using the data that I think is valuable going to be valuable for a lot of different people. Matt, do you have anything else that you want to add to today's presentation?
No, I'm excited that I got involved. I hope this spurs some more thoughts for people and they start running with it. And I'd love to hear from them if they like it, they don't like it. If they have more ideas how to run with it, it'd be great. And as always, it's fun to be here.
Absolutely. It's yeah, don't tell the boss, but it's kind of fun to be on here and do these kind of things and learn more and more. This being one of them, as we kind of close this out, this being another one of those. And honestly, I can tell you that it's been every one that we've done so far. You know, I do get a chance to play with AIM data and AIM hardware and do a lot of this, but I have learned something on every one of these, this one being no different, this one maybe being something I learned more about AIM software and processes than I have on anything else. So these are just great learning tools for me as well. So I'm having a good time doing them. So it's all a good time. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. If you're in Indianapolis, make sure you stop by our booth and chat with us. We're gonna have some new products there and some and a new booth, I understand. So everybody, looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next week with Kevin Wells and Formula Drift. Talk to you guys soon.
Right.